Hi, my name is Mike, and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is Superboy, starring the Legion of Superheroes, issue number 204, dated October 1974. This is an issue I enjoyed. It has an A story and a B story. I did enjoy both stories, so this is kind of a good thing. This is very early in Mike Grell's career. He had been given the reins of this title just an issue earlier, and he had gotten the title because Dave Cockrum had left abruptly because he was fighting over that original art in Superboy number 200. Gonna take a look at the cover. Cover kind of looks like something maybe out of the House of Mystery or something like that, particularly with these curtains and the shadowy figure who's kind of making demands on the Legionnaires. And these guys are scared. They're looking like, holy crap, this guy's going to spank us. We see the shadowy individual is saying, I intend to join the Legion whether you like it or not. And I'll prove that I'm better than any of you. We see the very frightened looks from Superboy, who is centering. We see Lightning Lad in his new outfit. Saturn Girl looking super sexy as she's frightened. Brainiac 5 and Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Boy comes across as kind of a douchebag in this issue, which is unusual for him. And we're told the first story is, who could he be? The Legionnaire no one remembered. And we're told, plus, Brainiac's secret weakness. This normally followed what DC editorial liked doing. And this usually came from Joe Orlando. Was to create a scenario on the cover that would entice the reader to purchase the comic. This differed from Marvel's philosophy. Marvel's philosophy was to show a fight that people wanted to see, or readers wanted to see. Whereas DC, sometimes they would present a scenario, and you want to see how it played out. I bought comic books early on based on the covers. So this is a cover that would have appealed to me. The covers, Nick Cardy. Nick Cardy was kicking ass at this time. There's a couple of things that's noteworthy, or at least noteworthy in this issue. One, the faces, not only are they beautifully drawn, they look the way they should look. It looks like these five took a dump in their underwear, which is good because you like that expressiveness, which Nick Cardy was really good at. Also, another thing, Nick Cardy was really good about this, is that they actually look like teenagers. Maybe Lightning Lad kind of looks like maybe he was left back in school a couple of times. But nevertheless, they look like teenagers, particularly Superboy. He looks like a 14-year-old, which is exactly what you want from this comic. Because DC's editorial position was that Superman was always 29 years old. He never aged. The characters never aged. The times changed, so the settings would be updated, but they would remain that age. With Superboy, it was decided he was 14. And most of the other Legionnaires were in that 14, 15 year range. I think Montel was categorized as the oldest at 18. So anyway, we're going to get into the story. And I'm going to start with the splash page. I'm going to skip the ad. So we're at the Legionnaire headquarters. The time is 3075. Legionnaire headquarters is located in Metropolis at that time. It's actually on the same street, and they still use streets, the grids, as Superman's permanent address. I think it was like 344 Clinton Street. It was something Clinton Street. So that's where the Legionnaires' headquarters is currently residing. We see some of the members here, and they're looking through their old historical data banks, and they're coming across a picture that appears to be genuine. No one is doubting that this picture is not genuine. But the thing is that the individual in the picture is somebody that they have no memory of. But here they are, just sort of casually sitting there, and he even has a nameplate, and he's called Anti-Lad. And we see some very kind of skeptical looks from Montel, Lightning Lad, Cosmic Boy, Superboy, and Saturn Girl. One thing I do have to mention, and this is much counter to the issue's protagonist, is that the Legions, their hair looks great. This is 1974, like, hairstyling right here. Their hair looks fantastic, I have to say. So anyway, they're looking at this grid, and they're trying to figure out exactly what was going on at this moment. And we're told that the story is the Legionnaire no one remembered. And I don't see the... here's the creative team. Cary Bates, he wrote both stories, the A and B story. And Mike Grell, he also drew both the A and B story. I suspected he inked this issue because it looks really good. The faces are a little nice. The bodies are a little stiff. That's something that Grell had trouble with. But nevertheless, I think they wanted him to get an idea of how to deal with these characters. Superboy has this one very strange look where he has like one eye higher than the other. I guess it's kind of like his Colonel Klink look. So now I'm going to turn the page. And we have Superboy asking, who was Anti-Lad? And then we take a look at Anti-Lad himself on this gridded photograph here. Obviously, there's a little bit of Cyclops from the X-Men in this design here. We should also note his hairstyle, which is skin. He is a complete baldy. We're talking Telly Savalas level bald. But there's also some interesting indentations in his head and his people. And we're going to find out about him right now, because now we have to move 4,500 years into the future. So we're taking a look at Earth 4,500 years in the future. It looks like global warming has done its thing, because we look at the surface. It appears to be underwater. There's a few trees and rock formations standing out. It kind of looks a little green, probably a lot of algae in it. But above the surface are these huge decks, these like holodecks. These are decks that are hovering above the surface, and we see this highly sophisticated space vehicle. So this is clearly an advanced civilization. So in the 4,500 years from the events that are taking place in Superboy to this point, Earth's technology has gone up exponentially, even though maybe the surface isn't so great here. And we're seeing a conversation that's occurring on one of these decks, these kind of like flying, hovering decks. Father, come to my cubicle right away. Something terrible has happened. And the father and son, they're having this talk. And apparently what was going on is that the son is writing a biography on Superboy. And during the course of writing this book and researching it, he found out Superboy was kind of in the Epstein files. Wanted to check that out. So he had to update his material. But in the course of doing that, the kid accidentally changed time. So the flow of time has changed because of his, I guess, his interference. He just kind of wanted to research things, and I guess actually he ended up having a negative effect on the future. Time travel stories, I always enjoyed them. I never focused too much on the mechanics of them. So, for example, I know that when I was watching Avengers Endgame, and they were explaining the various scenarios of how time travel was going to work, I was like, sure, whatever, okay, I will accept what I'm being spoon-fed. I did not spend a single second worrying about the mechanics. I just accepted whatever Tony Stark said. And I'm going to turn the page. And it turns out that we're seeing what happened. And this is, I think it goes back to Adventure Comics. I think it's issue number 247. That was one of the longtime key issues, the Legion. But there was always debate on how valuable it truly is. I know there were people who felt like the first appearance of the Legion was a key event, but it was a less important and minor key event than other events. So it was sort of like, it's a top tier comic book, but it's on the lower part of the top tier. If that made any sense. So what's going on here? We're seeing a flashback, and we're seeing the Legion as they originally appeared, which meant that Lightning Lad had that terrible theatrical costume. Saturn Girl's costume was fine. They actually brought this back in the 80s because they looked at it and they said there's really nothing wrong with this costume. And then we see Cosmic Boy, who they always had problems with his costume. He's sort of in this pink petticoat type of outfit. It's like very Prussian. Based on the design, I would think that this kid was in some type of military school. But he's in pink. So, maybe he's sending a signal there. Maybe it could be a signal like with Johnny Cash when he sung that song, A Boy Named Sue. So, the song is the parents named him Sue because if anyone gave him crap, he would have to kick their asses and then he would have to toughen up. And then at the end of the song is basically, don't do that to your fucking kids. So anyway, what's happening is that the three Legionnaires are disappointed with Superboy. They thought Superboy would be a terrific member to bring into the club. At this point, it was kind of a club, and in this reality, he fails the test. Obviously, in the actual book, he passes the test, despite what you see on the cover. But this time, he fails the test. The three Legionnaires are disappointed. They thought that this guy had what it took, and they realized, hey, we're better than him, and they just fly off into the future. And because of this, Superboy never becomes a member of the Legion. So obviously, this changes everything that was going on. Maybe they had a few victories that would have been defeats or were defeats, and so forth. We're not necessarily told that this is a good event or a bad event, but it's a history-changing event. So the reality that these guys are living under from the 75th century is going to be affected because apparently the changes weren't instantaneous. There's kind of a flow, so they have to wait for the repercussions to reach the 71st century. Now, in terms of the guys here, they're two guys. They're completely bald. They have an indentation on the top of their heads, and it makes them look like penises. So in the future, we became dickheads.
But it wasn't until he met his beautiful wife that he learned using logic and reason isn't enough. You have to be a dick to everyone who doesn't think like you.
And yeah, anti-lad in the story does have to act like one. So anyway, the father is concerned about this. Obviously, they changed history. Didn't mean to do it, so he's not angry with his son. But nevertheless, things have changed, and this is not how things are supposed to be. The father is part of. Do you remember the guys who exiled General Zod and the other two? He's a part of that council. He's a part of the Science Council. And because of this, he has access to this kind of top level equipment that his son has been accessing. And he's normally fine with it because he's like, hey, there's nothing wrong with looking at these old videotapes. But this time there was a problem. The father is saying, listen, I'm going to have to go to the council, the Science Council, so we can figure out what's going to happen here. But I'll explain to you. Before I do that, I'm going to explain to you how this has happened. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this box of dominoes, and it's in its original packaging. So this thing has been in its original packaging for like 55 centuries. But I'm going to open it up to show you what a dumbass you are.
You removed it from its original packaging.
No! It's no longer a collectible! Oh!
Turn the page. So anyway, the father, he takes the dominoes out. He stacks them up. And he tells his son, listen, just imagine each domino here being 1 century. And when you change that 20th century, it created this this chain that will affect all the centuries. So I'm not sure whether this dad really needed to take those dominoes out of that original packaging, but nevertheless, that's what he did. And now the father's going to the science court to see what he can do, because you kind of have to do things right. Now, the son feels awful about this because he's the one who screwed up. He didn't handle the equipment correctly. He's thinking that by the time the science court goes through all the depositions and so forth, it might be too late for them. So what he's going to do, he's going to try to fix what he screwed up. And he comes up with an idea where he does a couple of things before he heads for the time chamber. And one of them is that he creates this device which, by the level of 75th century science, this is a game. This is a little toy. This is kind of like an amusement thing. But in the 30th century, this is like the most powerful thing ever. So we see the young man here. He's going to do something which requires him to sort of exert some form of domination over the 30th century Denzels, which probably mean the Legion, because that's the only ones he's concerned with. He's heading to this time chamber. He said that it's something that's strictly enforced, that virtually no one has access to it except for the very high ups. It's forbidden to actually go into the past unless there's some type of emergency that the court says it's okay to do. But he's going to break that because he feels that, he kind of has to hurry up and accelerate this. And also because he kind of knows what he did, he figures, well, I'll have more background in terms of fixing it. Going to turn the page. A couple of ads for kung fu and bodybuilding. These are common ads. We got an in-house ad for these DC 100 pages for only 60 cents. There are a couple I do remember buying off the newsstand. I do remember buying this issue of The Flash. And this has an October date. I even remember the movie that my mom took me and my brothers to, because every weekend we would go see a movie. And one of the nice things was that since she had cashed her check and she had a little extra money, she'd buy soda and comics. And I do remember specifically pointing out this issue of The Flash and buying it. The World's Finest, I also remember when I was on the newsstand. It was one of my fondest memories. It was a hot day. It was toward the end of the summer, I believe. And the new comics that came out, and the kids, including myself, we were swarming the comic stand. And I remember there were all kids of all types of ages, you know, the older kids, younger kids, black, white, whatever. And we were just swarming these comic stands, looking for new issues. And I remember specifically this issue caught my eye because, again, the cover. The Justice League of America, I have that comic. This is when the Super Friends came out. This was a pretty good issue. The Sandman issue, I remember being enjoyable. The Batman, I probably read at one point. The problem with Batman was those horrible Golden Age issues. We have Shazam here. Shazam was a big comic for DC, or at least they believed it was going to be a big comic. Then it turned out to be kind of a huge flop, even though the show was successful. So remember, DC had 2 successful TV shows on. Plus they had the Batman Adam West in reruns. So they were doing much better than Marvel at the time in terms of TV. Then we have the horror title, The Unexpected. And I never really read the horror titles, even though I did enjoy them. And, of course, the young romance, you know, that's something I would read now. But definitely not back then. I remember being a little shit, and a neighborhood girl was really nice to me. She said, you know, I have all these comics, you can have them. And she had all these comics, and this huge build-up. And then when she gave me the comics, they were all romance comics. And rather than being very gracious to this young lady, I was like, yeah, they're romance. I don't like them. Oh, little shit. So anyway, I'm going to get back to the story. So anyway, so the kid here, we don't have his name, though we'll know him as Anti-Lad. He sets the coordinates to where he needs to go. But he makes a point of mentioning that he has to make one stop before he actually contacts the Legionnaires. And again, this is sort of a little hint to the twist that's coming up. As I had mentioned, Cary Bates, for however you may feel about his stories, even Jules Swartz would sometimes assign the interns his work and say, can you punch up this dialogue a little? But Cary always, he dotted his I's, he crossed his T's, everything made sense in the end, no matter how convoluted it was. So anyway, we're back at the 30th century Metropolis, but it's actually a few years earlier. So I think rather than being in 3074, which is when this comic took place, he had gone back to 3059, because I think the first appearance of Legionnaires occurred in 59, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So anyway, we see the Legionnaires. We see they're in their old outfits. So they're in those really terrible looking outfits, but they're drawn by Mike Grell, who's really good. So the outfits don't look as bad. Again, their hair is beautiful, though. We see Phantom Girl here. Oh, she looks like Catherine. She looks like Jacqueline Smith. She is so beautiful. She is my favorite girl of the Legionnaires. She is just so loyal. So anyway, we see Cosmic Boy. He's talking here, and he's the leader of the Legion at the time. He's talking about getting new recruits. He's saying, listen, we tried out this guy Superboy. He was terrible. Nothing super about this guy. And we need to kind of find more We need to find more members. We want to grow our team. We want to grow the brand. Hey, Operation Human Shield. Maybe we can scratch off some of our names, put their names on it, and so forth. And then suddenly, as they're having this meeting at the round table, materializing is Anti-Lad, and he's suggesting that maybe they look at him as a possible member for the Legion. You can turn the page. So we're taking a look at Anti-Lad again. Now it's interesting here what Phantom Girl says, saying it's uncanny how he materialized out of nowhere. This is probably a little bit of a bone to the X-Men, because clearly the visor is based on Cyclops here. And again, we see the indentation in Anti-Lad's head, indicating that this guy is a huge dick, and he does kind of act like one. Cosmic Boy, he doesn't like this interruption. He's saying, "Listen, we don't appreciate intruders. Where the hell did you just come from?" He's looking at this guy. The guy has like the huge boots here, the ones that go up almost to the crouch here. He's kind of wondering what disco hell did you come from? Anti-Lad, he introduces himself. He says, "Listen, take it easy. I expected better from you." Now, the thing is that this guy is writing a biography on Superboy, so he's gonna have to write a lot about the Legion. I get the impression that Cosmic Boy is gonna be slammed in this bio, because based on the way that Anti-Lad is kind of interacting with him, because Cosmic Boy's not going to look good in this bio. That's all I'm going to say. And Anti-Lad is saying that he wants to be a Legionnaire, and we see this point of view where we're seeing Anti-Lad's boots here, and then we see sitting down Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl. Kind of gives the idea that Anti-Lad's gonna use these boots for stomping. Cosmic Boy acting like a total douchebag. He gets up, he stands straight in his 14-year-old glory, and he says, "Pretty smug, aren't you? But I'm sure you wouldn't be here if you didn't have at least one superpower. Kind of makes sense given that we're Legion superheroes. See, I'm smart. Okay, let's go outside and see what your specialty is." And Anti-Lad, again, he's saying, "Since you made such an aggressive entrance..." Oh, no, this is... and then Cosmic Boy says, "Since you made such an aggressive entrance, you shouldn't mind starting out with some combat trials." Anti-Lad says, "I'm at your service, Cosmic Boy. Who's my first opponent?" And then Lightning Lad, he comes forward. He's gonna take on this new kid. He's saying, "Listen, don't worry. I'm only gonna use enough electricity to kind of stun you. Put you in your place." Gonna turn the page. So Lightning Lad, I said Lightning Boy. Lightning Lad, he starts his offensive here. Anti-Lad's not impressed here. So when the lightning bolts strike, Anti-Lad is just kind of absorbing them, and he's just completely insulated from the charge. So he's absorbing the charge, and then he's sending it right back to Lightning Lad here. So Lightning Lad is the one that's stunned here at the moment. Then Colossus Boy, he comes forward. And what he's saying, "Listen, maybe you need to deal with someone who's a bit larger than you, a bit bigger." And then Colossus Boy starts to increase his size. Going to turn the page. However, Colossus Boy kind of discovers something about himself. Like when he's really big, he tends to be kind of heavy. Based on this dialogue, he I don't think he noticed that before. But the thing is, what happens is that Anti-Lad, he changes the structure of the ground underneath Colossus Boy. So Colossus Boy was standing on cement. Now he's standing on quicksand, which was something that terrified people in the 1970s. So what's happening is that Colossus Boy he's sinking to the ground here, and at this point, Anti-Lad is kind of gloating over the guy. So far, 2 Legionnaires have attempted to deal with Anti-Lad, and they both failed. Next is Cosmic Boy. Anti-Lad says, "I was wondering when you would join in on the fun, Cosmic Boy. Your super magnetism will make for an interesting bout." Well, I'm waiting, leader man. So there's kind of this tension between these two. I think they both recognize each other as dicks.
Dickhead. What an asshole!
The only thing, he can't really see it from Cosmic Boy because Cosmic Boy has that beautiful brunette hair. Kind of that Peter Brady type hair. But the thing is, Cosmic Boy has already put his attack into motion here. And what he did was he used his super magnetism to get some meteorites that were orbiting the Earth, and he's bringing them down. It looks like there's about 6 rocks here, and they're heading toward Anti-Lad right here. I can tell you, the biggest douchebags that I've ever encountered as a kid were the ones who would throw rocks at other kids. And I had to deal with a couple of really bad rock throwers. So Cosmic Boy right here is pulling a douchebag move. He's basically throwing rocks at this character here. And he's doing it from behind. So he plans on giving this guy a concussion from behind. I'm going to turn the page. I'll take a look at this one ad. It looks like it's for magic card tricks. I'm guessing this guy had been on TV for a while, and they were trying to figure out maybe they could go for the comic book crowd. I don't think these ads lasted that long, so they may have gotten that that one hit of fans, or maybe they can get enough fans to bother advertising again. Can turn the page. So we're going back to the story. We see Cosmic Boy. He's all proud of himself with his dick move. He says, "I'm only going to stun him. I'll only give him a mild concussion." He's a douchebag. He's throwing rocks at someone. Come on, fuck off. But the thing is, Anti-Lad is he knows about this attack, and he turns away the small meteorites. Honestly, justice would have been those meteorites hitting Cosmic Boy in the face for that douchebag move. But nevertheless, Anti-Lad, even though he easily repels the attack, he's impressed with Cosmic Boy, saying, "Hey, I didn't expect you to be that big a douche to pull a move like that." Then Anti-Lad, he turns super magnetism against Cosmic Boy. He levitates him, and then he attaches him to the clubhouse here. This is the old clubhouse that looks like that inverted rocket. Cosmic Boy, he's starting to complain here. He's definitely one of these, I can dish it out, but I don't want to take it. And Anti-Lad, he's kind of just, he's kind of gloating about this. And then he says, there you are, pal, back to normal. Well, how did I do? Do I qualify to be a Legionnaire or not? Cosmic Boy says, we'll talk about it inside. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, it looks like Anti-Lad has passed the preliminary test here. He's been deemed good enough that he has a place at the table. He has a nameplate. And what they're going to do is that they're going to give him, they're going to take a photo with him. And I don't know, maybe there was like insurance liability issues. Maybe RJ Brand, who was funding the Legion, he kind of wanted photos of what was going on, for insurance issues or not, or whatnot. And so this is where the photo came from. So we know where the photo in the splash page came from. What they're saying is that he's not an official member yet. He still has other trials to go through. But nevertheless, they are impressed with him enough that they're willing to do this with him. We see a couple of the members of the Legion, Brainiac 5 and Cosmic Boy. They want to learn more about Anti-Lad here. Again, we see that indentation in Anti-Lad's head, indicating that this guy is a penis. And he's explaining his powers. That basically he's sort of like Nemesis Kid, but he operates on a higher level than Nemesis Kid. And it sounds like he's saying that he was a mutant, that he always had these abilities to turn other people's powers against them. This is why he's called Anti-Lad. Brainiac 5, he's curious about something about Anti-Lad, and the fact that he's wearing a visor. Now, this is not necessarily unusual for the Legion. Remember, Pharaoh Lad had a mask. He was completely masked. Now, the story behind that, and I did explain in another issue, was that Jim Shooter intended Pharaoh Lad to be the first African-American member of the Legion, because he had black friends, they enjoyed comics, but they weren't represented. And Jim Shooter, he says, listen, I want my friends to see someone just like them in these comics, because it gives them a sense of belonging, and it normalizes the idea that, hey, if you're black, you can be a superhero too. Now, Marvel did that eventually with, the Black Panther, and then Luke Cage, and then with Luke Cage, they normalized the idea that, hey, he expects to be paid for his superhero duties here. The Legion would have to wait until Tyrock a couple years later. But anyway, going back to Pharaoh Lad, because the editors wouldn't allow an African-American character in the comic, Jim Shooter decided to mask Pharaoh Lad and to kill him off early so DC couldn't use him. Because his attitude was, if you're going to insult me and insult my friends like that, you're not going to use this character. So anyway, so Legionnaires with kind of masks and visors isn't that unusual, but it's enough for Brainiac 5 to ask about it. Anti-Lad is saying that he comes from a world where their planet is much closer to the sun, which means that his eyesight has been acclimated to a setting that's very bright. And normal light on Earth is like near darkness to Anti-Lad. So the thing is, the visor is amplifying the brightness so he can see. And it looks like the two. It looks like this explanation has kind of pleased Brainiac 5. Anti-Lad says, listen, I'll see you later, I guess sometime tomorrow. I think Cosmic Boy is saying, listen, we have guest quarters. So rather than you having to spend a little bit of money going to a Hampton Inn, you can just spend a little time in the Legion headquarters. If you're going to be a member, you're going to get used to it anyway. You need to get used to it anyway. So anyway, Cosmic Boy, Brainiac 5, they're talking here. They're talking about Anti-Lad. And Brainiac 5 is kind of bothered by him.
God, I hate that guy!
And Brainiac 5 believes that he's lying, that this guy is kind of just too good to be true. He has all the answers. He can handle anything. There's something not right here. I'm going to turn the page. So anyway, we are now at night, and somebody is reaching out for Anti-Lad's visor, and it turns out to be Brainiac 5. Brainiac 5 has kind of slipped into Anti-Lad's quarters here. This is very inappropriate behavior, but nevertheless, Brainiac 5 says, "Listen, this is our house, our rules." And what he does is he takes the visor And then he turns on the lights. Anti-Lad is kind of caught by surprise by this. He's like, huh? What? What? I can't see. Kind of like a normal person. But the thing is, Brainiac 5 is noticing this, saying, listen, if your story about you coming from this brighter than bright world is true, that these regular, LDS lights wouldn't be bothering you. And they clearly are. So then they have Anti-Lad in chains here. So he's being cuffed here at this point. Brainiac 5 is looking at the circuitry of the visor. And one of the things that Brainiac 5 is noticing is that this technology is far ahead of what they currently have. Now, Brainiac 5 is smart enough to figure out the circuitry and figure out the general idea, the schism, or the schematic of what's going on. But Brainiac 5 probably would have to reverse engineer this thing to understand it. And mind you, Anti-Lad had mentioned that this is basically a child's toy in their century. So Brainiac 5 looking and examining this visor would not change history because he wouldn't understand the specific circuitry of this electronics. So again, Cary Bates, he's kind of subtly, dotting that I, crossing that T. Brainiac 5 is also noticing that there's something that's registering as kryptonite here. So he's picking up traces of kryptonite on the visor. Cosmic Boy, he's pointing out that kryptonite, that's Superboy's single weakness. And he's asking Anti-Lad to remove one of his boots. Now, Anti-Lad's kind of cuffed here. So he's in cuffs. He has to remove that thigh-high boot here. Anti-Lad doesn't. He's going along because this is what he wants. He wants the Legionnaires to kind of change history. I don't know. Maybe Anti-Lad has kind of that boot fetish. That maybe he saw that issue of Superman kissing Star Sapphire's boots. He has a thing for that. So they take the boot off, and they find soil particles from the 20th century. And of course, they jump to the conclusion, or no, actually, Anti-Lad fesses up. He says, "Listen, I was there when Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, and Saturn Girl, they were testing Superboy. I was there. I interfered with the test because I was a little jealous of Superboy, and I didn't want to see him, succeed ahead of me." And he's saying that he interfered with the test. That's why Superboy failed. I'm gonna turn the page. Take a look at this one ad. It's for Big Jim. Big Jim didn't last very long. This is sort of a direct competitor to G.I. Joe. In terms of boy dolls, you had G.I. Joe, and then you had the Mego figures. And that was about it. So there was always an attempt by another company to sort of cash in on G.I. Joe. Big Jim was one of them. I don't think he worked out, though. I don't remember ever wanting a Big Jim. Gonna turn the page. By the way, the artwork is beautiful. And like I said, their hair is beautiful. So the three members, they confront Anti-Lad. They're very angry with him. They're saying, "Listen, now it makes sense how Superboy could fail our test, and it's this dickhead that's responsible for this." Lightning Lad, Saturn Girl. They're saying, "Listen, it's the fault of the dickhead." And Anti-Lad is saying, "No, it's not Cosmic Boy's fault. It's my fault." Cosmic Boy's like, "Duh." So anyway, at this point, Anti-Lad kind of he presses a button, and he starts to dematerialize. So he's being sent back to the 75th century, because the thing is that with this doubt now, the three members of the Legion are going to retest Superboy. Once Anti-Lad fades away, the other members of the Legion, they don't remember him, and they're going to say, listen, we really should retest Superboy. We have a feeling that maybe something happened with the test that isn't right. Of course, then what happens is they go back into time, they retest Superboy. He passes with flying colors. He's a member of the Legionnaires, and history has been restored. At least this version of history here. It appears that in the 75th century, the dickheads rule. So, the dickheads are going to protect their status here. And we see that the Anti-Lad, he's speaking to the reader, saying, I had programmed my visor to implant in each of them a post-hypnotic command, ordering them to have no memory of me once I disappeared. So they actually do have a memory of Anti-Lad, but the thing is they can't access it. So the hypnotic suggestion was placed that will not allow them to access that memory that's going to be dormant. And he did do a little trolling. So he did leave the photo intentionally to kind of have a little bit of fun with the 30th century and their primitive ways. So that's it. So that is the A story. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, not a whole lot of action here. Cosmic Boy does kind of look like a dick. Now, it's very strange because Cosmic Boy always seemed to me one of the guys who did things right. But he does have a history of doing dickish things. I think there was one issue that happened a couple of years later where Cosmic Boy just belts Light Lass, because apparently Cosmic Boy's planet, they have a holiday where you can't use your powers. But the thing is, there was an emergency where Cosmic Boy needed to use. He should have used his powers, but he refused to do so. And Light Lass called him out, and Cosmic Boy belted her for that. And he went on the mission anyway. And it created kind of you figure it created a bad situation with Timberwolf. Timberwolf is dating Light Lass. And, Timberwolf is going up to Cosmic Boy saying, hey, dude, why did you correct my girl? I correct my girl. You don't correct my girl. Light Lass is listening to this. She's horrified. Cosmic Boy's explaining, listen, I know the secret code of the Legion, the bros before the hoes. But seriously, dude, I had to belt her. And Timberwolf was like, listen, I understand, it's okay, but next time, you call me to do that. Light Lass, she's listening to this conversation. She's thinking to herself, I got to get my lightning powers back as fast as possible with these douchebags. So that's the repercussions there. So I'm going to go into the second story, and it's called Brainiac 5's Secret Weakness. And we have the same creative team, Carrie Bates, Mike Grell. In this, Saturn Girl does appear here. So she's like in Cosmic Boy. But Starboy gets a lot of time here. Also Supergirl, and of course Brainiac 5. And what's happening, and we see here a little preview, is that Supergirl has decided to sweep Brainiac 5 off his feet, and Brainiac 5 is going to quit the Legion. And he's handing in his resignation, which means he's giving up his flight ring. And he's throwing it to Cosmic Boy. Cosmic Boy, he's wearing his really cool outfit. He had that terrible purple nonsense, and that was dreadful. This is Dave Cockrum. This is a huge improvement. Starboy, he still has that kind of crew cut look here, so he's still mowing his hair. Also with Starboy is that his identity is the fact that he's dating Dream Girl, who is the hottest chick in the Legion. So the thing is, Starboy is always constantly reminding the other members who his girlfriend is. So we see as Supergirl is flying off with Brainiac 5, and Brainiac 5 is flinging his flight ring to the Earthbound Starboy. Starboy is thinking, I never thought the day would come. Brainiac 5 has quit the Legion, but I still am dating the hottest chick in the group. So anyway, we're kind of given a little bit of backstory here. Apparently, Starboy was on a furlough here. Saturn Girl is telling him to, quote, cool up. This is a phrase that they tried. This is an example of trying to make fetch happen. It didn't happen. God knows there must be some adults out there who have memories of actually trying to use this phrase in their everyday life that they read in their comic book that they love. And everyone around them is just looking at them like, what the fuck are you just saying? And you figure there's at least some kids who have that embarrassing memory. So anyway, we're told that cool up is slang for calm down in the 30th century. Starboy, he's saying, listen, I've been on active duty for 2 months. I need to relax. He needs a vacation every 2 months. You figure, you're with the Legion of Superheroes. You're gonna have some hard work here. He's saying, listen, I got to spend time with my girlfriend here. Dream Girl, who's kind of hotter than you. Then a voice calls out, you can say that again. And then Starboy saying, well, it's about time you showed up. Turn the page. And it's Brainiac 5. And apparently what's happening is that both Brainiac 5 and Starboy are going on vacation. So they decided they're going to double team. And they're going to go on vacation, the same place. I guess there's kind of a riser version of a planet of pleasure in the 30th century here. That's where they're planning on going. We see the starship here that they're warming up and getting ready to go. Again, it looks like Star Trek, because again, Star Trek was the aesthetic. This is a few years before Star Wars. Saturn Girl is saying, listen, Brainiac, you really need this vacation. As much as Starboy needs a vacation, you need it way more. Brainiac 5 doesn't really understand Saturn Girl's comment. And Saturn Girl is explaining, listen, guy, you've been working way too hard. We've noticed that you've been tired. In fact, you were late because Brainiac 5 was explaining that he had overslept. So Saturn Girl has noticed that there's been a lot of wear and tear on Brainiac 5. He's been kind of tired. It seems like to her that he really needs some time off to relax and to unwind. We see Brainiac 5 is actually agreeing with this because he's noticed that he's been tired, and he needs this rest. So anyway, so the cruiser goes. It's off world here. So at this point, they're in space. They're heading to their kind of Ryza rendezvous here. Now we have Starboy. He's saying, I think I'll have a glass of golden Andromeda wine with my dinner tonight. How about you, Brainy? Now, you notice here, because there's no one carding him, they're going to drink alcohol, this Andromeda wine. Now, this leads to some very, very uncomfortable conversation. Now, Starboy is saying, listen, I plan on drinking wine when we reach the planet. So at this point, anything I say, it's because I'm inebriated from the wine that I haven't drunk yet, but I plan on drinking it. So anything I say, it's like, I'm a little inebriated. Think of it that way. Brainiac 5 is like, huh, what? Well, okay. And then Starboy starts to get into some very uncomfortable things. One of the things is that they're going to be sharing a hotel room. And Starboy saying, listen, when you get out of the shower, and, can I look? And Brainiac 5's like, what? Can I see the little guy? Because, we always kind of wondered, do you have the Jolly Green Giant down there? Or do you have the little Sprout down there?
Up in the valley of the Jolly Green Giant lives a guy they call the Little Green Sprout. He's not very big, about the size of a twig, but that's how Jolly Green Giants start out.
And Brainiac 5 is like, what the hell are you talking about? And Starboy saying, listen, me and Dream Girl, who's the hottest chick in the Legion. And we kind of talk about, you and Supergirl. And, her taking it green. Is it really Serene? And we kind of we kind of want to know whether, you kind of have a big one or a small one. How's Supergirl handling this? Brainiac 5's horrified by this conversation. And then Starboy's explaining, listen, it's not me, it's Dream Girl. She thinks of threesomes, but not with you because that would be weird. But with Supergirl, but she wants to get an idea of what Supergirl's doing, in the bedroom. This is normal behavior. All I'm doing is just asking, can I look? Brainiac 5 is just like, he's at this point he doesn't want to get involved with this conversation. Starboy is just saying, listen, I'm drunk here. Kind of just, overlook it. Gonna turn the page. So we're told that Brainiac 5 is lost in thought here. And going to take a look at the DC subscription service. This is the in-house ad. This is Superman basically hugging this, hugging Adolf, the mailman here. Highlighting some of the comics that are being highlighted are Rima. Rima was a Jungle Girl comic. Rima actually is a surprisingly entertaining comic. I think it only lasted 7 issues. I remember enjoying all 7 issues. I did buy the Caveman comic books, Torg and Kong. They were okay. They were fine. The Bernie Wrightson cover for Kong was really good. But yeah, Rima is something I would not have bought as a kid, because she's a girl. But nevertheless, I read these issues as an adult, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of impressed with Rima. Next, we see a Batman comic, 100-page giant, facing off against Two-Face here. There's Robin. And yeah, you kind of, get. They added some Kirby titles like Commandy, Rima, Omek. When Commandy was canceled, Commandy was the highest selling title that was canceled during the 1978 DC implosion. And had it sold just a little bit better, it would have been saved. Gonna turn the page. So anyway, we see Brainiac 5. He's trying to scrub his head of that weird conversation with Starboy. He's thinking of his girlfriend, Supergirl. And apparently, they've sort of had this on-off thing. Brainiac 5 and Supergirl. Apparently, it's okay for, the Aryan Maiden of Steel to kiss a green guy. Now, they couldn't have her kissing a brown guy or a black guy because that would be weird. But nevertheless, she's passionately kissing, Brainiac 5. She's like, once you go green, it's Serene. But then we're brought back to the Legion of Superheroes headquarters. There's Sadal. And suddenly there's a surprising visitor here. And they're like, we haven't seen you in years. And they're saying, listen, we didn't think you would ever return. And we're not given the identity, although we obviously know as readers it's Supergirl. And she's explaining, I thought about this for a long time, and considering what the Legion once meant to me, I decided the least I owe you all an explanation. Again, Supergirl had her own comic book. I think it was canceled probably by the time this issue came out. But nevertheless, they were trying to do things with Supergirl. And I guess they're using this as an example of Supergirl kind of setting things right with the Legion. She was always kind of an on and off member of the team anyway. She was very well respected, but again, she kind of was never really comfortable in the 30th century. So anyway, we go back to the two guys who are cruising in silence at this point. They're heading toward the recreational asteroid. So this is a city that's based on an asteroid. Kind of similar to what Magneto had, but Magneto only had like kind of like a localized science lab, where apparently this is sort of like a part of a city, almost like a small city, similar to AI. If you remember the city that the guys from AI went into. You can turn the page. I forgot the character's name, even though I love that film. So anyway, Starboy saying, wow, this is great. This is like Space Vegas here. It's really cool. We're going to have that wine. I'm going to check out your junk, and it's going to be great. Brainiac 5 just wants nothing to do with this guy at this point. He's saying, well, why don't you go to the rooms and check us in and all that, and I'll stay the hell away from you. So anyway, Brainiac 5, he's kind of enjoying the recreational areas without Starboy around. He's kind of thinking what he'll do next. He's thinking about taking a dip in the anti-grav swimming pool. And then suddenly a voice calls out, "Hello, Brainiac." It's been a long time, hasn't it? So anyway, Brainiac turns around. He doesn't believe who he sees. And of course, it's Supergirl. And Supergirl's explaining, listen, I came here for you. And she's saying, listen, the Legion I can survive without. Don't need those fuckers. And especially that weird Starboy kid. But I finally realized life without you is meaning. So again, Brainiac 5, this might come back to haunt him, saying that he doesn't really value the Legion. Now, this is coming from Supergirl. But later on, we learn might be coming from Brainiac. Brainiac 5, he's surprised here. He's like color me off green. I don't know what to say. He calls her Kara. And Supergirl gives her a passionate kiss. And we see some very well drawn faces from Mike Grell. Mike Grell was excellent artist at the time. He's definitely a Neil Adams clone. He admitted it. He said that the reason why he got into comic book art was that when he was in Vietnam, he had picked up an issue of those Green Lantern Green Arrows that were drawn by Neil Adams, and he was hooked on them. And one of the guys in his unit told him that comic book artists make $1 million a year. So Mike Grell was like, hey, I'm going to get into that. When Mike Grell got out of the service, he realized that comic book artists were not paid that much. They were not paid $1 million a year. There probably were some comic strip, the syndicated strips. Probably Charles Schultz of the Peanuts. He might have been getting $1 million, but no, not these guys, including Neil Adams. So anyway, very seductive, because what Supergirl is doing, she's kind of getting her finger underneath Brainiac 5's collar, and she's saying, "Come here, lover, closer, closer." Gonna turn the page. Yeah, the Mike Grell did not draw teenagers, and he did not draw teenagers who acted like teenagers. Except for Starboy, he if you remember that scene in Donnie Darko with the Smurfs, that's Starboy. One of those guys is Starboy. So anyway, Starboy, he's checking at the hotel desk. He's looking for his friend. He's saying, "Listen, this guy's green. seriously, you kind of have to notice him. But the front desk says, yeah, I did see that guy. And he was with this really hot blonde. And they kind of just went off. And Starboy's saying, this is definitely Supergirl. He's thinking this is Supergirl, but he doesn't understand why Supergirl would be there. So he's not even sure it is Supergirl. He's thinking it might be her. But I need to fly off. You know, hey, I need to finish that mission. I need to know what kind of junk he has. So anyway, as Starboy's looking around, he kind of just he heads for the cruiser, and he sees that it's about to take off, and it's Brainiac 5 and Supergirl who's in the cruiser, and Brainiac 5 is saying that he's giving his resignation for the Legion in. He's formally submitting it to Starboy. He's going to take off with the cruiser. This might be theft, but Brainiac 5 is like, listen, I helped you guys out a lot. You owe me. The boss is not going to miss this one cruiser. And kind of, you know, can you just like hang around this place for a few days before kind of narking me? And that's what Brainiac 5 is trying to say here. Starboy saying, listen, I know you're kind of crazy for Supergirl. She's an awesome looking chick. Again, you know, Dream Girl kind of talks about her in that way. But you can't throw your career away. You know, you leaving the Legion to be with Supergirl, that violates the bros before the hoes. You can't do that, dude. Brainiac 5 is like, yes, I'm doing that, and no, you can't look at my junk here. And just say goodbye to everybody, and just know that your dreams of, you know, you, Dream Girl, and Supergirl, never gonna happen. Gonna turn the page. So, Starboy here, he's thinking about Brainiac 5, thinking that, you know, he's been acting a little strange. But he certainly wasn't expecting this, but this is certainly a big change in him. Starboy, he immediately breaks the bros before hoes. He narcs on Brainiac 5. He tells them, you know, that they took off, that they are in, they're in stolen. They stole the vehicle from the Legion, and we need to repossess that thing. You know, hey, you know, we don't want any negative equity here, you know, with our boss. So that's what Starboy is communicating. Meanwhile, we find that that Brainiac 5 and Supergirl, they've already traveled thousands of miles in their cruiser. Things are looking good until this moment. And then what's happening is that Brainiac 5 notices that there's a deadly radiation storm coming up. And it looks like it's from the Zoltron belt. The Zoltron belt. I think Carrie Bates was a huge fan of a movie that Sean Connery did called Zoltron. That's the one where he's in that weird outfit, the go-go shorts and the hairy chest and the headband. Carrie Bates apparently was a huge fan of that movie, so he kind of threw in that name there. Now what's happening is that these rays are super deadly. They can go through the ship, and they can go through Brainiac 5, and maybe even Supergirl here. So the thing is that he's worried about the ship being vaporized, which means he's worried about himself being vaporized. Supergirl can handle this, but not him. However, we see Supergirl, she immediately takes off her cape, and she wraps Brainiac 5 in it. Then we see in the next panel, it's an odd panel in that we see kind of these three figures. They're kind of going through this particle phase. So we see things that are a little fuzzy. We're not quite sure exactly what's going on here. But we see the storm is kind of really going through the ship at this point. Can turn the page. I don't need to look at that ad. Take a look at an in-house ad. These are for the Treasury editions. I've explained it before. The comic book companies wanted the kids to buy higher priced items. These treasuries did not sell. Eventually, the newsstand vendors, they would eventually sell down on them. The thing with the treasury editions, unlike the regular comics, is that they weren't returnable. So the newsstands were kind of stuck with them. And I would remember buying some of these treasuries like dirt cheap. The condition, it wasn't very good, but it didn't matter to me. And the newsstand dealers would sell them down, but it took them a long time. This is for Shazam or Captain Marvel. Once again, DC thought this was going to be huge for them. The show was successful, TV show, but not the comic. Then we see Treasury of Superman. Kind of some of the highlights. They're mostly stories from the 1930s, though there are some from the 70s. And there is art by Neil Adams. So whenever they had an opportunity to put Neil Adams' artwork in these treasuries, they did so. It was an instant sell. That was one of the things I would look for when I bought these treasuries. You can turn the page. Then we're back to the ship. And we see Brainiac 5. He's alive. He's well. He thanks Supergirl for wrapping him up in her cape to protect her. And Supergirl, there's some miscommunication here. Because Brainiac 5 is saying, it's a lucky thing you were here with me. It wasn't really luck. I mean, Supergirl kind of planned that whole thing. We saw the whole thing where they took off. Now, Supergirl's kind of confused about this because she's like saying, lucky that I'm here. I just got here. You didn't even know I was here. So what's going on? So there's some miscommunication here. And it turns out that the Supergirl that Brainiac 5 was interacting with was actually an android. Was a metal android, a titanium android that he was interacting with. And we see that the metal android, the skin was stripped off. So the Supergirl costume is off. And the android is naked. Now we should point out the android's made of metal here. So we got some metal tits here. We got a titanium puss here, which I'm sure is quite hard and quite cold. And what's happening is that the robot or the android is explaining what's going on here. And again, beautifully drawn by Mike Grell. And apparently what was going on was that Brainiac 5 was building this android while he was asleep. So Brainiac 5 was sleepwalking, but at the same time he was using the time to build this robot of Supergirl here. We see Brainiac 5 in his pajamas. Wow, they are quite flamboyant. Brainiac 5 sort of has that Unitarian, outfit that he wears, and it's not particularly flashy. It's definitely something that he works in this outfit. But when he is asleep, he is flaming like an Olympic torch here. And what's being explained is that Brainiac 5 was spending hours building this android without his knowledge. So it's similar to the situation that Peter Parker had to go through with the alien outfit, where the alien outfit would take advantage of Peter when he was asleep and kind of go out and have his adventures. But Peter was completely unaware of this, and it would tire him out. Can you turn the page? So then Brainiac 5, he figures out what's happening was that he was having feelings for Supergirl. He knew he couldn't reach out for the real thing, so he created one, using his science. So this is and the ending is very similar to an episode of Star Trek called "What Little Girls Are Made Of," and that's one of my favorite episodes. It not only is it a terrific story, in my opinion, it has one of the prettiest Star Trek girls or women, Sherry Jackson, and oh my God, she was so beautiful back then. So anyway, we see the robot. The circuitry can't stand this. This is like if the robot were to go to Chernobyl and would actually encounter what is known as the elephant foot. The elephant foot in Chernobyl is the waste matter that was, kind of collected when the reactor exploded. And apparently it is the most radioactive thing that humans have ever created and that probably exists on this planet. And it's not necessarily a big deal now because it's been kind of like stuck there for like 40 years in the reactor. By the way, they actually can't do anything about it because electronics will not work when it's close by because that's how much radiation is coming off. And when they took a picture of it, they actually had to take a picture of it through a mirror. They had to bring a mirror down there, take the picture. Then they had to get the hell out because apparently if a human being spends more than, say, 2 or 3 minutes there, and they would have to be heavily protected, they would die. And the guys who basically saved Europe, because the core would have melted into the aqua system, those guys knowingly went in there to drain the water so that wouldn't happen. And like within an hour, they were dead of these like very painful deaths because they were exposed to so much radiation. So anyway, that's the situation here. So think of that episode of Star Trek where she ends with, "I love you, I love you." But then what happens is that the space cruiser, it's going to explode because the radioactive particles have damaged it so much. Supergirl once again wraps Brainiac 5, the real Supergirl, who's watching this strange scene of this metal woman with metal tits, kind of like proclaiming her love for Brainiac 5, like this is a sex doll, and this is a sex doll with a puss that's mighty cold. So Supergirl's flying off. She's saving Brainiac 5, and they're back at Legion headquarters. Originally, Supergirl was going to take Brainiac 5 back to that pleasure place. Brainiac 5 was like, "Oh, hell no, don't leave me with Starboy. Don't leave me with that weirdo." So she did Brainiac 5 a solid, taking him back to Legion headquarters. Kara is kind of trying to explain what's going on with her life. That she's trying to sort things out in 1974. She had her own title. It was a short-lived title. So the character was kind of officially dormant, more or less. She would have stories that would appear in the Superman family comic. So while her own title was canceled, nevertheless, she was still involved in new adventures. But she had to share space with Lois and Jimmy, which was a little humiliating. But nevertheless, Kara is leaving the door open, to maybe her and Brainiac 5 kind of like hooking up, and they leave on a passionate kiss. And we're told that the next issue will be a 100-page super spectacular that will be on sale the last week of August of 1974. That was issue number 205. That was a very creepy, weird issue. Carrie, you should have been ashamed of yourself. So I'm going to go to the letters. And we don't see one single letter. We see partial excerpts of multiple letters. DC editorial had decided that this was what they were going to do to increase sales. because the thing is that kids kind of like seeing their letters printed. And the idea is that if we print as many letters as possible and the kids know that we'll do this, they're more likely to write into this script. Maybe we'll get increased sales. It's kind of a strange strategy, but this is what they were operating under. So it's really hard to tell what's going on here. One of the things I do notice is that they're talking about issues that were prior to Mike Grell's appearance as the artist, but the thing is they don't want to mention Dave Cockrum's name. So when someone brings up an issue that Dave Cockrum did, DC editorial was sort of like, oh yeah, that guy. And we see that a lot of the fans kind of like the direction of the Legion. The characters were dormant for a while. Nobody cared about them. But then Dave Cockrum rebooted them. And it's good. One guy says he's giving up his MMMS card and his Spider-Man code key because he really enjoys the Legion. So he's the kid who preferred Legion of Superheroes to Spider-Man. I would have considered them equal at the time, but I'm 7 years old also. And editorial saying that, listen, we'll have more information on Mike Grell because you guys really seem to like him. So yeah. And that's it. And that is my review of Superboy starring the Legion of Superheroes, issue number 204, and I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.